So I'm here in my garage working on the Holley that's on that Tornado we're reviving, which I'll put a link right up there. And I kind of thought to myself, you know, there's a real big difference between the Holleys and the Carters, which are the two main types of carburetors we use. Because Edelbrook still has Carter style, and actually the Street Demon is a copy of the Thermoquad, and that's from Holley. And since I've never really worked on a Holley before, it's just kind of interesting to see the pros and cons of both of these. So we're going to kind of go through that. If I can just hopefully educate on, the which application is best for your car and the type of driving you do. Because that's all this is about. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just trying to point out that sometimes you can't just put something on there because people say so. So let's start. This is a 4150, very common Holley. This only has a front inlet, and it has a transfer pipe to go to the secondaries. It's very easy to tune because you just take off the fuel bowl and the jets are right there. Your power valve is right there. And you can do this on the car. It's very simple to do on the car. The float level, very easy to do. Take out this plate. You can adjust it from outside the car, on the car. You don't have to do it outside, you can do it on the car, where you just loosen these nuts and you wait for the fuel to start coming out of here while the car's running. Very simple. No air door adjustment. So the secondaries only have one adjustment. It's when the vacuum opens them. That's it. The fuel bowls are on the outside to help limit the heat, unlike a quadrijet, which is the fuel bowl sits squarely in the middle, which caused bad vapor lock on that. And a very smooth transition of power because of the equal square bore and the vacuum secondaries. So it's not a very sudden, it's a very smooth transition from from 2 to 4 barrel. And the last positive is actually this power valve, in theory, because it doesn't let more fuel in until the carburetor needs it, because the vacuum drops below a certain number. This one's 6.5 inches of mercury, and you can adjust this from 1 to 10 inches of mercury, and it all depends on the vacuum of your cam. So that's very good. Now the downsides. Every carburetor is going to have a downside. They're very finicky. They will go out of tune very easily, just because of the nature of the carburetor. The floats get stuck because of the way that they're slung in here. The gasoline, if it stays over time for heat and whatever, it will make them sticky, and you could have them stick up or down, usually down, and then you flood your carburetor. The accelerator pump leaks like a sieve as it sits because gasoline's sitting on top of it all the time, and it just eats away at the rubber and it dries it out, and you get a leak. They do vapor lock. Not as bad as a quadrijet, but because it's all aluminum and the heat just transfers out to the outside fuel bowls, it will vapor lock, and you cannot run a car on vapor. Power valve. Power valve is a slight positive thing, but when these lock up, open or close, your car will not run, and you'll be kind of limping yourself home when this doesn't work. And these they actually blow out too, which then you have absolutely no control. And to set them is a pain, because if you have to do trial and error to make sure you have the right one for your car, so that when the vacuum comes, doesn't come in too early or too late, so you don't go lean away rich. Now, the Carter. First with the AFB, which is the aluminum 4-barrel, it had mechanical secondaries, but a weighted secondary door that could not be adjusted, and it made it very hard to hot rod it, because that door, to adjust it, you had to change the weight in there. If it opened too early, you got too lean. If it opened too late, you were way too rich. So they moved on from the AV to the AVS, which is the aluminum vacuum secondary, which is similar to the way Holley does it, except they used a secondary door also, because the secondaries were bigger, to make the transition easier. And that door was adjustable by a spring, which they kept. But once again, their carburetor, just because of the vacuum secondaries, was very finicky. So they went to this final design in '69, which is the Thermoquad. This is the pinnacle of Carter. This gets its name from the phenolic body, which is made of a type of plastic which is very heat resistant. It has some advantages. One, it has outboard fuel wells in the plastic, which is kept 20 fuel bowls, which are kept 20 degrees colder than the rest of the carburetor. The fuel bowls, the way they're designed, you never starve under acceleration because the jets are always buried in gasoline. Small primaries for efficiency. I can get 17 miles a gallon at my 340 if I don't use the big holes. If I just use the primaries, I can nurse out some good economy. I don't know why, but they're very adjustable. You can adjust the float height, all the jets. You have a tree with metering rods, and these adjust the primaries by actually closing them off even more. They're tapered by the vacuum signal. So this, as it's more vacuum, this is sucked down, making it leaner. And then as you accelerate, it pops up from lack of vacuum. And it also uses this little lever to make sure that at the top you have the most flow you can get with the combination. And there's a lot of adjustment in that for primaries. You know, you can adjust this door to open, close, you know, at a speed to match the secondaries to make sure your car doesn't get too much or too little air. And the accelerator pump is very easy to adjust on this, being that you just have to bend the rod and it gives you the squirt, and also the squirter could be adjusted to give you enough flow. So there's a fair amount of adjustment. It also is very good at just staying set. Once it's set, it's set. Now the downsides, well, these fuel wells down here leak, and they have to be redone. These were done with Marine Techs, or you could use JB Weld Marine, but you have to make sure you use something that's heat resistant and ethanol resistant so they don't leak. Otherwise, the car runs pig rich, and you can see it burbling out through the primaries. Inside of here is a X-ring. Here's an X-ring. This is stronger than an O-ring because they tried O-rings at first and it wasn't strong enough to keep the seal between the pickup tube from the jet to go to the booster. So they made an X-ring. Well, the X-rings have a problem when they dry out. You leak fuel over the top, straight into the intake manifold, or you suck air, and the car will run immediately incredibly lean. It's hard to change the jets. You got to take the whole carburetor apart to get into these jets, and you have to take it off the car. Otherwise, you can have small parts fall into your intake manifold. This body, the felt body, can crack. If you misadjust it and have one of those pins sticking out here and tighten down on it, it will crack it. If you drop this, you will crack it. They don't warp. These don't warp. They can't. I've worked on a lot of these. They don't warp. The plastic is sandwiched between two pieces of aluminum with 8 bolts holding it down. 8 bolts holding it down. It's not going anywhere. I think the cracking fallacy was brought up because these would start leaking, or the X-rings would go, and it would just be leaking gas everywhere, and they just assumed it was this being warped, not that there was actually a physical problem with it. So what does this all mean? Well, the thing is, they're so different, these carburetors. For my own personal thought, I would only use a Holley if I was drag racing all the time. It's too finicky for a street car that sits 90% of the time. I mean, my Charger comes out 3 times a month, maybe in the winter, because that's when I can drive it. In the summer, if it comes out once a month, that's a lot. And if I had a carburetor that if it sat, the accelerator pump would start leaking, that'd be bad because I'd just be rebuilding it all the time. But for drag racing, because you can adjust everything on the fly and change out the metering of it so quickly, it is the perfect carburetor for drag racing. If you're doing any type of racing all the time, that's the carburetor for you. And this style hasn't changed since the 60s. So you can buy the 4150, 4160, this 5000 series. And there's also, the Demon series. There's a whole bunch of things that are almost identical to this, and they're perfect for drag racing. Street drive, it's not the best. I would recommend, if you car is set up originally with a Thermoquad, use the Thermoquad. They're common, and once set up right, they're well. If you don't want that, you can go to Edelbrock and get their ABS copy. Hell, you can buy a Street Demon from Holley, which is a copy of the Thermoquad, except it uses 3 barrels, which is just one large secondary. Once you set it, you forget it. It's done. And for most of us, we're not going to be doing hardcore drag racing. We're going to be driving to the Biff Burger. We're going to be going on cruises with our family, cruises with our club to different places. You just want a carburetor you can go, start it up, and drive off. And that's just my view of how these work. If you watched to this point, thank you very much. If you've gotten some of this, you can hit the like button. Crush it, actually. You can subscribe to see more information like this, because I do talk a lot about old cars, and I am bringing back that Toronado. Comment, please. I love comments. I do respond to all comments. I may just like it. Sometimes I even write some responses, but I enjoy it because it's a conversation between car people. And finally, share it, because sharing is free on YouTube. I verified that. It is completely free. So with that, if you have a cool old car or something interesting, like my BMW, take it out, because you'll make someone's day, maybe even your own. And I'll catch you down the road.